Thank you so much, folks, for coming to this fireside chat. We're gonna do the silent disco treatment again. As everybody can see, this is a packed full house, so Such is currently more important than Taylor Swift packing out and selling out these seats here. This is a fireside chat. This is a case study on Moonpig. It's really around how they have not only reinvigorate the personalized greeting card industry or e-commerce world, but it's also about how they sort of unlock that value by selecting commerce tools and building out a modern commerce stack. So I'm joined by Such here today, VP of Engineering at Moonpig. And how about, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Hi. Nice to meet everyone. My name is Such. So yes, I've been at Moonpig for about 2 years. I've been in tech in general for about 20 years now. So prior to Moonpig, I was at Prime Video for 5 years, building out like high velocity, high volume apps and website. Before then, I was at Shazam. So again, like very high volume, high requests applications. Then prior to that, I was at Ocado, so back to e-commerce. I've kind of jumped around as my career's gone on, essentially. And then prior to Ocado, I've worked at a few other, like I've worked at a couple of startups. I've worked in digital archiving. I've worked all over the place. I've never been really good at choosing a single lane. And yeah, other than that, I'm from London, which meant that getting here was pretty easy. And yeah, that's it about me, basically. Like, I've always very much been a technologist. As I've moved through my career, it's been about building things, and then later on in my career, it's been about building teams and building things. So yeah, nice to meet you all.
And can you tell us more about Moonpig for those of you who are not familiar with Moonpig?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, Moonpig, what we do is really simply, I guess, we do cards, we do gifts, we do flowers. But I think one of the ways that we try and look at it is the idea is to kind of give people moments, whether those moments are one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, because obviously we've got different sets of functionality that allow you to send gifts, cards, etc. to multiple people. But essentially our whole thing is providing the opportunity for people to have a moment. And generally that's via a card, be it digital or physical. But it can be through other things, you know. So we like I said, we do gifts, we do flowers, we do anything that allows you to send someone a message in a way that's super personalized. So part of the core of our business, and one of the things that I imagine we'll probably talk about, is one of the things that differentiates us and always has differentiated us is the ability to really personalize, for example, a card. And a lot of the functionality that we offer allows you to do things that other people don't allow you to do. So video messages, voice messages, using AI to create interesting and funny like messages that go in cards. All of the types of stuff that we see as our IP are the things that we concentrate really hard on being able to build out. And then anything that we see as a commodity, we buy. And so I think that's kind of where the marriage of commerce tools and Moonpig has worked really well, because we've been able to spend as much of the time as we would like to on building out the stuff that is unique to our platform, building out the stuff that building out the interesting challenges, the difficult things that other people aren't doing in order to give us a competitive edge. And then essentially saying, we know that this is a solved problem and it's solved by many people, but I guess our thing is who is the best fit for us, and for us it was commerce tools. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So you've alluded to the value and personalization. You are the pioneer when it comes to these personalized greeting cards. As you've sort of embarked onto this journey, is there any specific challenges or obstacles that you faced, you encountered? How did you solve for them? How did you approach them?
Yeah, I mean, so I think, so to give you some I guess background, some context in terms of the journey that we've had, we essentially had a giant monolithic app that was built in-house, and it handled everything. So it handled commerce, it handled the front end, It handled all of the dispatching. It handled the printing of the cards, literally end to end. Essentially, was built in house. And so we had to figure out like I said, what are the bits that we care about. And at the time, it was about figuring out what are the customer problems that we're mostly looking to solve. And again, what are the things that we want to be able to concentrate on versus what are the things that we don't so much care about, or not so much not care about, but don't care to build ourselves. And at the time, the way we were set up meant that we were spending far too much time on areas that didn't make sense for us to be spending our time on. And we were spending far too much time taking care of things that, again, we didn't want to be taken care of. So part of the move as we moved, not just to Commerce, but also to the architecture that we've got now, is we essentially now have everything running in the cloud, everything runs on AWS, everything scales uniformly and seamlessly because everything is serverless. And so initially the problems that we identified were the things that we've solved for now. It was the fact that scaling was really, really difficult and continued to be difficult throughout the years. One of the interesting things, I guess, about Moonpig is that something like 25 to 30% of our revenue throughout the year comes from 4 or 5 peaks between Christmas and essentially Father's Day. And so when you've got really peaky traffic like that, one of the things that's important is being able to scale. And that was one of the issues that we constantly had, was not being able to scale in a way that was predictable and especially cost effective, right? That was one of the biggest issues, not being able to scale in a way that was cost effective. Sorry, what was the question? I've kind of gone off on a tangent. Oh yeah, the challenges. Okay, so yes, as we were moving, I guess it was a few things. It was how do you build in a way that allows you to continue to release features, because you can't just spend 6 months, a year and a half, however long it takes re-platforming, because that's the exercise we were going through. So how do you continue to deliver value for the business and for customers as you're doing all of that? And additionally, one of the interesting challenges is how do you choose, what are the criteria that you'd use to choose the people that you're going to partner with? So how do you figure out if it's commerce tools that you're going to go with? How do you figure out what you're going to use as your content management system? How do you figure out what you're going to use as your CRM? So it was making those choices. It was continuing to provide customer value whilst we were doing the work that we needed to do in order to move in a direction that was more scalable, that made more sense for the business and again made more sense for customers. And also it was how do you do that relatively quickly? Because the more time you spend with split attention, like I said, you don't want to forsake growth for re-platforming. The more time you spend with split attention, the harder it is for your team to actually be able to get the job done. And again, start providing value. So for us, I think those are the main issues that we faced.
Okay, awesome. My next question is really around the notion of what's the catalyst behind all of that. We're hearing about digital transformations. We've heard it for the last 2 decades, really. I think we all can agree that over the last 2 or 3 years, the pandemic accelerated digital adoption and
really
digital
helped,
transformation. Yeah. Certainly helped. No presentation, no fireside chat goes by without anyone mentioning generative AI. Without the shiny objects that everybody's chasing, what was the catalyst for you to succeed and build your company up over the last couple of years?
Well, I wouldn't say there was necessarily a single catalyst. I think Moonpig has always been incredibly ambitious. Like I said, I've been here for 2 years. The reason why I joined was the story that I was sold as I was kind of interviewing for the company. And the reason why I'm still here is that same story, right? And Moonpig is incredibly ambitious and always has been. Like, prior to the pandemic, it kind of accelerated some of the plans that Moonpig had and has always had. But realistically, I don't think there was a single catalyst. It was just the question that constantly gets asked is, are we doing, or have we done, or do we have the best thing that we need in order to be able to achieve hockey stick growth? Because we have plans for hockey stick growth, right? So what do we need to do in order to support that in the near future? And so that's always been the mindset that I think we've come up stuff with. what do we need to do in order to support continued growth? What do we need to do in order to ensure that we're in a situation where, when we eventually get to the numbers that we have in mind, and over the next 5-10 years, because that's what we're building for. We're not building for 2024 or 2025. We're building for 2030, 2035. What are the things that we need to do in order to get us there? And again, that going back to the architecture that we had previously, there was no way that we were ever going to be able to do what it is that we needed to do to get there with the way our system was built. And again, so just to give an example, a lot of the code that we ran was in-house on actual physical tin. And so a large part of what we did was moving into the cloud, and moving to providers who had a similar philosophy in terms of the way it is that they build, so that we know that as we double traffic and then double traffic again and then double traffic again, we've got a platform that will support that without us having to make major changes, without us having to go through another re-platform, without us having to split attention in the way that I was talking about previously. It allows us to kind of to grow very organically, in a way that again is very cost effective, and that's I can't state enough the importance of building in a way that allows you to scale in a way that in a fashion that is cost effective, because that's one of the key things that we're constantly thinking about. And again, because of the way our traffic is so incredibly peaky, you don't want to be in a position where you're paying for a whole bunch of instances, EC2 instances on AWS, when you don't need to. And so the way we've looked at things is, what do we need to do in order to make sure that it scales linearly with the amount of traffic that we get, and then also auto descales linearly with the amount of traffic as we come out of those peaky periods.
And so you've alluded to this hockey stick effect. You've been in the news, you've been in the headlines around an uptick in revenue and other sort of metrics. Is there anything that you're planning, any new releases, acquisitions, new markets, anything that you can share? And also from the aspect of, how does Commerce Tools enable any of those initiatives?
Yeah. I'm not going to give away too much of the secret sauce, but we've recently expanded into a bunch of markets. Ireland we did last year, and that's kind of allowed us to get greater coverage of the UK. We're in the US, and we've got plans there, obviously, ambitious plans, because it's a huge market. We're in Australia as well, and so this is all stuff that's come post re-platforming, and so we've done a lot to roll ourselves out in a way that, like I said, was scalable. Part of that is, so a few years ago we acquired Greets, which is a Dutch company that does a very similar thing, or did do a very similar thing. And one of the things that we've been able to do as of about a year ago is we've migrated them on to our platform. So it's a single platform, both companies now under one banner, all under the Moonpig group, name. And that was definitely aided by the fact that we had Commerce Tools as our commerce provider. And what's happened now that we've managed to expand the platform, and the platform is so flexible, what that's enabled us to do is, essentially we're in a position where you build once and you run it everywhere. So you build once, you build a feature once, and it goes out everywhere. So recently we've released sound, for example. So we released video cards. So you record a message, put it in as you're uploading and choosing a card. Then you go through, you send it to someone, they scan a thing, and then it pops up and it sends them a video. We've done that with video, we've done that with audio recently. We've done a lot of interesting stuff, like I said, with AI, with allowing us allowing a customer, to create a message using AI. If you're like me and really, really bad at figuring out what it is you want to write in a card, it's a mega helpful sort of feature. And again, this is one of those things that we've managed to build it once, and then you can release it everywhere. And that's one of the great things about the platform that we've got now, and one of the great things about using Commerce Tools as part of that platform, is that essentially, as far as we want to expand, as far as we have plans to expand, we can and will do, because it's one thing everywhere, everything everywhere all at once, basically. And that's been the key to, again, being able to be in a position where you are both scalable and flexible in a way that allows you to continue that journey to growth.
So you've pretty much already answered the following question in terms of the ability to be flexible, scalable, bring out new features, a more, I guess, diligent cadence of bringing out features, as well as the expansion to new markets. Is there anything else, any sort of improvements, anything that you've experienced that after the move over to Commerce Tools or the shift to Composable Commerce that really impressed you, anything that you've seen beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so the big issue, again, or one of the big issues, I know I've mentioned a few, but one of the big issues that we had prior to moving to the platform that we've got now is we just couldn't go fast. We couldn't build features at the speed that we had ideas. And that's a problem for every company. It doesn't really matter what architecture you've got. It doesn't really matter what team you've got. If you've got some level of ambition, you're always going to be in a situation where you've got far more ideas than you have ability or capacity to execute on them. And so I think for me, the biggest thing that's happened has just been the speed up that we've had in terms of being able to build stuff for customers, being able to release things to customers. So we've seen a huge uptick in terms of the number of features that we release per week, per month, per year. And that in itself is a driver of growth because it's allowed us to experiment at a rate that we've never been able to experiment previously. And when I say experiment, I'm talking about running A/B tests and using the data that we've got from those A/B tests to understand which decisions we should make. It's allowed us to run multiple versions of multiple pages concurrently in a way that we've never been able to do before. And so our throughput now in terms of features is astonishingly high compared to where it was, say, 2.5, 3 years ago, in a way that I don't think that we would have imagined prior to the migration. And so for me, that's been the biggest thing, is the fact that you can iterate, and the feedback cycle has been so short and quick and sharp now that we can release things minute to minute, right? So, and like obviously part of this is due to Commerce Tools. Part of it is also due to just the architecture that we've chosen and the way in which we've automated a lot of stuff, which kind of the two stories fit together hand in glove, if you will. But yeah, for me, the biggest thing is just the astonishing just speed up we've seen in our ability to go to market with an idea. And so now truly one of the biggest limiting factors is just not having enough capacity to do all of the things that we want, rather than not necessarily having the platform or the tooling to be able to do all of the things that we want.
So if you've alluded to the impact that this transformation had on speed and agility, what impact, as the VP of engineering, what impact did it have to your team in terms of organizational design, keeping developers, engineers happy? You've talked about experimentation, talent retention. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely had an effect, right? Because as an engineer, the last thing that you want to be hampered by is the platform that you use. The last thing that you want to be stopping you from being able to be creative is the platform. And so in terms of our engineers, it's definitely been night and day. The number of conversations that I've had around just how much better it is compared to what we had previously. And that's not to say that what we had previously was bad, right? Like, it had its faults, but it got us to where we were in our growth journey. It's just we needed to make a change in order to move into the next phase of growth. But I think it's made a huge impact in terms of a lot of our developers, a lot of our engineers are really focused on, and our EMs and product managers are really focused on the customer experience, which you should be, right? Like, you should be focused on what is it that you can do and what is it that you are doing in order to make the customer experience markedly better. And with the new platform, we definitely have gotten to a position where you can more easily, more regularly, more competently, more predictably affect the customer experience and understand the effects that the changes you've made have had on the customer experience because of, again, that feedback loop. And so in general, it's been night and day. Like, it's so yeah, it's been night and day. Like there's definitely been a huge difference. So I think in terms of retention, it's definitely made a difference. Interestingly enough, one of the things that I would say was also great for retention, since we're talking about it, has just been the act of moving to a new technology. Like nothing excites engineers more than the ability to play with some new tech, right? And we did a lot. We've moved to a lot of new technologies over the past couple of years. There's been a lot of challenges. There's been a lot of things that have been interesting. A lot of things that have been difficult. One of the things that wasn't difficult, to be fair, was commerce tools. It's been fairly easy to integrate with, although we have made some mistakes along the way. And again, to answer your question in short form rather than long form, it's definitely made a huge difference. Yeah.
So you were saying that one of Moonpig's values is obviously personalization. Prior to this talk, we talked about kind of like what does the front end experience look like. You just alluded to customer experience and how even engineers are getting excited about customer experience. Can you double click into that a bit in terms of how you build out the front end experience if you're building it yourself? You've mentioned content management systems before. Can you double click into that a little bit for us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so just to go back a little bit. So one of the things that I talked about was the fact that we generally care about. We buy in things that are commodities, and we'll make the stuff that's our IP. We make the stuff that is the secret sauce or whatever. And personalization is one of those things in terms of we've got a lot of interesting information around who you are, obviously, like who it is you're sending to, and so we can tailor the experience that you've got to those two parameters that are quite unique to us versus other people, essentially. And so. So go double clicking on that then. It's been sorry, what was the question again? I've managed to lose myself again.
The front end experience.
Oh yeah, exactly. So the front end experience. So we've done a huge amount in terms of using content, both contentful to allow us to make changes to the front end without having to make releases. We've done a lot with obviously commerce tools, but in a headless fashion. And so we build out our own front end. We've got our own checkout experience. We've got our own editor experience because again, that's the secret sauce. Like one of the things that people come to us for is the ability to make a super personalized card. And so we've really leaned super heavily into the areas of our tech that are specific and unique to us. And so yes, we built our front end. We've generally done it using again AWS technologies and technologies that are out there and that are common for everyone. So we use a lot of TypeScript. We use a lot of things like React. We use a lot of serverless, which allows us to scale in a way that, like I said, is organic and follows the curve of visitors that we get. So yes, we've done a lot in terms of tailoring the front end, specifically on a commerce tool's back end, because it allowed us to do that and it allowed us to concentrate on the bits that we know are going to differentiate us from the competitors out there.
And you've alluded to the checkout process or the checkout experience, right? I mean, if I look at a fully holistic e-com project, I feel card, order, checkout, that's 60-70% of the overall experience, right? With, of course, you need a product catalog and other bits and pieces, but the checkout experience is so key. And I would be curious to hear kind of like your thoughts on how you build that out and also how that works with the seasonality that you have. Because I'm assuming once Mother's Day comes around, you have enormous scalability, not considerations, let's put it this way.
Yeah, so our checkout is an interesting one because it's something that we're in the middle of redesigning at the minute. And we're kind of releasing it and experimenting with it over the next couple of months, and we have been doing over the past 2-3 months as well. But you're right, it is key to the experience. Login as well, right, is key to the experience because again, it allows us to personalize in a way that means that we know you as a customer and we can present you the most interesting options once we know who you are, essentially. When it comes to things like peak, yes, it is interesting, difficult, unique. Because again, similar, as I've said previously, and similar to some businesses, but not many, our peaks are few, but heavily trafficked, and a large percentage or proportion of of our overall revenue for any given year. And so we've leaned really, really heavily, like I said, into going cloud first on everything. So again, to go back to the way our infrastructure is constructed, everything's on AWS. Again, everything is serverless. Everything deploys and scales without us having to change much of anything, which is hugely different to the way it has been previously, where you would have to predict how much traffic you were going to get in any given peak, figure out how much you needed to allot in terms of either physical tin, or just after that when we first moved to AWS EC2 instances, etc. So it means the way we have things now means that essentially we don't have to do much, and the constant worry that you might have had around a system falling over is no longer an issue for us, essentially.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. I have at least 5 more questions, and I could be listening for another half an hour. Such is going to be so kind. He's going to meet us at booth or stand F10. He's going to hang around for any sort of other questions. But I would love for each one of you to put your hands together for Such, an amazing leader to be listening to.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.